She didn't forget you. She didn't move on the way you think. Right now, while you're focused on your life, she's quietly watching from a distance, deciding if the man you've become is worth coming back to. She starts checking your life from a distance, not because she's bored and not because she suddenly feels lonely, but because something inside her was triggered. It's rarely about the past itself, it's about curiosity. It's about that subtle feeling of, I wonder who he is now. When a woman pulls away or walks out of your life, she doesn't just erase you emotionally, she creates space. And in that space, your absence becomes noticeable. At first, it feels like freedom to her, new people, new conversations, new attention. But over time, the excitement fades and reality sets in. That's when the mind goes quiet enough for memories to surface. And this is where it begins. She checks your social media, not obsessively, not every minute, but just enough to get a sense of your energy. She watches your stories. She notices who you're with, what you're doing, how you're carrying yourself. She looks for signs, not signs that you miss her, but signs that you're doing well without her. Because the biggest question in her mind isn't, does he still want me? It's, did I make the right decision leaving? Women don't come back to the man they walked away from. They come back to the man they see evolving. If your life still looks the same routines, same emotional state, same neediness, same vibe, there's nothing new to be curious about. But if your energy has shifted, if you look calmer, more grounded, more focused, that's when attraction quietly reactivates. Growth creates mystery, and mystery creates emotional pull. Sometimes she won't even admit she's watching. She might tell herself it's just coincidence that your profile popped up, that a friend mentioned you, but deep down, she's gathering information. Is he happier? Is he more confident? Does he seem emotionally stable? Is he still stuck in the past, or has he moved forward? And the most powerful part is this: the less you try to show anything, the more authentic it feels. When you're not performing, when you're not posting for validation, when you're just living your life, that's when your presence becomes magnetic. This silent observation stage is important because it's where her emotions start to shift. She remembers the good moments more than the bad. She remembers how she felt around you, not the arguments, not the reasons she left. Time softens the pain and highlights the connection, and the stronger you appear in your own world, the more she starts to feel that subtle sense of loss. Not dramatic regret, not desperation, just a quiet thought that repeats in her mind, he's different now. And that's the real trigger. Not your words, not your messages, not your explanations. It's your absence combined with your progress. When she sees that you didn't fall apart, that you didn't beg, that you didn't chase, that you didn't collapse emotionally, something shifts inside her. Respect grows. And where respect grows, attraction follows naturally. She's not watching because she wants the past back. She's watching because she wants to know if the future version of you is someone she still belongs with. And the more you focus on building that future without trying to impress anyone, the more powerful the outcome becomes. Because when she finally reaches out, it won't be to reconnect with who you were, it will be to discover who you've become. The moment you emotionally detach, everything changes. Even if nothing is said out loud, emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring or that you become cold. It means you stop being controlled by the outcome. You stop needing a specific person to validate your worth, your happiness, or your future. And ironically, this is exactly what makes you more attractive than ever before. When you were attached, your energy was different. You checked your phone more. You waited for replies. You overthought every message, every tone, every delay. You wanted clarity, reassurance, confirmation. And that energy, even if you try to hide it, was felt. Neediness isn't always visible in words, but it's always visible in behavior. It shows up in how quickly you respond, how much you explain yourself, how much you try to fix things that aren't broken, and how afraid you are of losing someone. But when you emotionally detach, you shift from seeking to choosing. You stop chasing the connection and start living your life again. Your focus returns to your goals, your routines, your purpose, your growth. You're no longer waking up thinking about whether someone misses you. You're waking up thinking about what you're building. And this shift is subtle but powerful because your entire presence changes. You speak differently, you move differently, you react differently. You're no longer trying to pull someone toward you, you're simply standing in your own space. This is where attraction is reborn because emotional detachment creates unpredictability. When someone can no longer read you easily, They start thinking about you more when they no longer have guaranteed access to your time, attention, and emotional energy. Your value increases, you're playing games, but because you're no longer over invested, you're no longer placing someone at the center of your world, and people are naturally drawn to those who have their own center. From her perspective, this feels strange at first. She's used to knowing where she stands. She's used to being able to feel your emotional availability. But now there's space, and in that space, her mind fills the silence. She wonders what you're doing. She wonders who you're with. She wonders why you seem calm instead of reactive. And the biggest trigger is this: she feels a shift in power, not in a manipulative way, but in an energetic way. You're no longer waiting, you're no longer chasing, you're no longer trying to convince her of anything, and that's what makes you attractive again, because true attraction doesn't come from effort. It comes from self-sufficiency. It comes from emotional stability. It comes from knowing that you'll be okay with or without any specific outcome. When you're detached, you don't fear loss as much. When you don't fear loss, you don't behave in ways that push people away. This is why emotional detachment works so deeply. It removes pressure, it removes expectation, it removes the invisible tension that exists when one person wants more than the other, and suddenly the connection feels lighter, safer, more natural. There's no need to impress, no need to perform, no need to prove your value. You already know who you are. And the moment she senses that you're no longer emotionally dependent on her presence, something flips inside her. She doesn't feel chased, she feels curious. She doesn't feel needed, she feels invited, and that shift from being needed to being chosen is what brings attraction back to life. Because when you detach from the outcome, you stop trying to hold on, and that's exactly when people start reaching for you. Before she ever comes back directly, she almost always tests you indirectly. This part is subtle, and if you're not emotionally aware, you'll miss it completely or misinterpret it. The message might seem casual, even meaningless on the surface, a random like on an old photo, watching your story after weeks of silence, a short message like, "Hey, I just saw something that reminded me of you." No deep conversation, no emotional confession, no clear intention, but it's never accidental, it's a probe. These small actions are emotional feelers. She's not reaching out because she suddenly wants a relationship again. She's reaching out to measure your emotional temperature. She wants to know if you're still attached, still available, still reactive, still hoping. In her mind, she's asking one simple question: if I step back into his world, will I still have the same power I had before? This is where most people fail without realizing it. They overreact, they respond instantly, they become overly friendly, overly emotional, overly invested. They start explaining their life, their feelings, their growth. They try to show how much they've changed, how much they've learned, how much they miss her. And in doing that, they answer a test in the worst way possible. They show that nothing has really shifted, that emotionally she still holds the same position in their mind. But the test isn't about what you say, it's about your energy. It's about how centered you are. It's about whether your response comes from calm confidence or from hidden hope. When you're truly detached and grounded, your replies are relaxed. You don't rush, you don't interrogate, you don't seek clarity, you don't try to steer the conversation toward the past or the future. You simply meet the moment as it is. From her perspective, this feels different. She expected familiarity, she expected emotional access, she expected to feel important immediately. But instead, she feels something else: uncertainty. And uncertainty is powerful because it creates emotional tension. She starts wondering what changed, why you're not reacting the same way, why you seem unaffected, why you're present but not invested. These indirect tests can show up in many forms. Sometimes it's a question about your life, sometimes it's a comment about the past, sometimes it's just a reaction to something you post. But the pattern is always the same. She initiates light contact, watches your response, and then decides whether to move closer or pull away again. And here's the key: she's not testing your interest, she's testing your emotional position. She wants to see if you've grown or if you're still standing in the same place emotionally where she left you. If she senses neediness, expectation, or emotional hunger, her attraction shuts down. Not consciously, but instinctively, because no one is drawn to someone who feels incomplete without them. But if she senses calm, self-respect, and emotional independence, something shifts. She feels safe to explore again. She feels curious. She feels challenged in a subtle way, not challenged by competition, but by the fact that she no longer fully understands her place in your life. This is why these tests are so important. They're not about getting her back, they're about revealing who you've become. And the more neutral, grounded, and centered you remain during these moments, the more her indirect curiosity turns into direct interest. Because when she realizes she no longer controls your emotional state, she starts wanting access to it again. And that's when the messages become longer, the conversations become deeper, and the distance between you slowly begins to disappear. No matter how confident she seems after walking away, no matter how happy her new life looks on the surface, there is always a quiet comparison happening in the background. It's automatic, it's subconscious, it's not something she plans to do, but something her mind naturally falls into. Every new person she meets, every new connection she explores, gets measured against the emotional reference point you created. At first, everything feels exciting to her: new attention, new energy, new possibilities. The conversations feel fresh. The chemistry feels different. There's novelty, and novelty can feel like growth even when it's just change. But as time passes, the emotional depth becomes harder to replicate because surface attraction is easy to find, emotional resonance is not. She starts noticing small things: how the new person listens, how present they are, how emotionally safe she feels, how natural the connection flows. And without even realizing it, she begins comparing, not in a dramatic way, not in a conscious ranking system, but in emotional memory. She remembers how she felt around you: the laughter, the comfort, the way conversations didn't feel forced, the way she could be herself without performing. And this is where nostalgia begins to rewrite the story. The arguments fade, the reasons she left soften, the pain loses its edge. Time filters out the emotional intensity and leaves behind the highlights. The brain does this to protect itself. It wants to remember the good more than the bad. And the more peaceful her current life becomes, the more space there is for reflection. This is also when regret starts to form, but not in the way people imagine. It's not panic, it's not desperation. It's a quiet question that keeps returning. Did I let go of something real? She doesn't necessarily want you back immediately. She just starts wondering if the connection she walked away from was rarer than she thought. And the more she compares, the more she realizes that emotional compatibility isn't common. You can meet many people, but you don't connect deeply with many. You can feel attraction often, but you don't feel understood often. And when she notices that the new connections don't give her the same emotional experience, your memory becomes more powerful. This is especially true if you were emotionally stable, grounded, and consistent. If you made her feel safe, heard, and valued without controlling her, if you were calm in conflict, if you had depth, presence, and emotional leadership, those qualities are hard to replace, and they become even more valuable in hindsight. What makes this comparison even stronger is that you're no longer part of her daily life, you're no longer accessible, you're no longer reacting. You exist now only as a memory and an image. And memories, when mixed with emotional distance, tend to grow idealized. She doesn't remember your flaws as clearly. She remembers how you made her feel. And that's when the emotional shift happens. Not because she's unhappy with her current life, but because she realizes that what she lost was meaningful, that the connection wasn't ordinary, that it wasn't easy to find again. So even while she moves forward, even while she explores new people, a part of her emotional world keeps circling back to you, not because she's stuck in the past, but because some connections leave a psychological imprint. And when she starts feeling that nothing quite matches what she once had, your presence becomes stronger in her mind than your absence ever was in real life. When she sees you growing, not just talking about growth, but actually embodying it, something inside her begins to shift in a way she can't control. Real growth is quiet, it's not loud, it's not performative. It shows up in how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you handle situations, and how peaceful your energy feels. And that kind of growth is impossible to fake, especially to someone who once knew you closely. At first, she might not even register it consciously. She just notices that you seem different, calmer, more grounded, less reactive. You're not seeking attention. You're not trying to prove anything. You're simply living your life. And this creates an emotional contrast in her mind. She remembers the version of you she left. And now she's seeing a version of you that feels stronger, more stable, more complete. This is where regret begins, but not in a dramatic or painful way. It's subtle. It starts as a quiet realization is actually doing well, not pretending to be okay, not forcing positivity, but genuinely aligned with himself. And that realization hits deeper than any emotional message ever could because it removes the story she told herself when she left. Most people create narratives to justify their decisions. She likely told herself that you weren't compatible, that the timing was wrong, that she needed space, that she had to choose herself. And maybe some of that was true at the time. But when she sees you evolving, those narratives begin to crack. Because now the outcome doesn't match the story. You didn't fall apart. You didn't stay stuck. You didn't chase. You didn't wait. You move forward. And growth without resentment is what really triggers regret. If you were bitter, angry, or trying to show her what she lost, it would feel defensive. But when your growth is natural and detached, it forces her to reflect without emotional resistance. She can't tell herself that she was right to leave because you're clearly becoming someone valuable. This also creates something deeper than attraction. It creates respect. And respect is the foundation of long term emotional pull. When she sees that you didn't need her to become better, that you didn't rely on her absence to improve, that you simply chose yourself, it changes how she perceives you. You're no longer the person she outgrew, you're the person she might have underestimated. And this is where regret becomes internal. She doesn't express it, she doesn't announce it. She just feels it in quiet moments. When she's alone, when she scrolls, when she reflects, she wonders if she would fit into your life now. She wonders if she would even be the same level you're operating on emotionally because growth creates distance, not emotional distance, but dimensional distance. You start existing in a different mental and emotional space. And when someone realizes they may no longer have access to the version you they left, the value of that connection suddenly increases. This is why true growth is the most powerful signal you can send without ever sending a message. It communicates confidence, it communicates self worth, it communicates emotional leadership, and it does it without words. So when she feels that quiet sense of regret, it's not about wanting the past back. It's about realizing the future version you might be someone she now has to earn. When she finally comes back, it's rarely dramatic. There's no emotional speech, no confession, no sudden declaration of love. It's usually simple, subtle, and almost casual. A message, a question, a reason to reconnect. But beneath that simplicity is something much deeper that has already shifted the power dynamic. Before, the emotional balance was different. One of you wanted more, one of you was more invested, one of you was more afraid of losing the connection. And that imbalance is what created the tension, the distance, and eventually the separation. Because when one person places the other at the center of their world, attraction slowly fades. Not because love disappears, but because polarity disappears. But now everything is different. You're no longer standing in the same emotional position. You're not waiting. You're not hoping. You're not trying to recreate the past. You've built a life that feels complete on its own. Your focus is on your purpose, your growth, your peace, your direction. And that changes the entire energy of the connection. From her perspective, this is what makes coming back feel risky. She no longer knows where she stands. She no longer feels guaranteed emotional access. She no longer feels like she can leave and return without consequence. Not because you're punishing her, but because you've genuinely moved forward. And that creates respect. This is the part most people misunderstand. She doesn't come back because you waited. She comes back because you didn't. She comes back because you stopped revolving around her emotionally. Because you stopped making her the main source of your happiness. Because you became someone who chooses instead of someone who needs. And when the dynamic shifts like this, the connection feels new again. There's no pressure, no emotional weight, no expectations, just two people meeting from different level of awareness. You're not trying to convince her of your value. You're simply allowing her to experience it. This is also why the outcome no longer controls you. Whether she stays or leaves again doesn't define you. You're not attached to the result. You're present, open, but grounded. And that emotional stability is what makes you powerful, not dominant, not controlling, just centered. From her side, this feels like something she has to earn, not something she automatically gets. Your time feels valuable. Your attention feels intentional. Your presence feels rare, and rarity creates attraction, not because you're playing hard to get, but because your life actually is full. The irony is that the less you need the outcome, the better the outcome becomes. When you release attachment, you release pressure, and when pressure disappears, connection becomes natural again. There's no fear of loss, no fear of abandonment, no fear of repeating the past, just clarity. So if she does come back, the real question isn't whether the relationship will restart. The real question is whether it will align with who you are now. Because the goal was never to get her back. The goal was to become someone who no longer needs to chase anything. And when you reach that point, everything you attract from that place is real, not because you waited, but because you grew.